Another year for pour and sip. Are we going into our third year?
Yes.
It is our third year.
Our third year, but I guess we did only have our second birthday in September. So
I mean, you could go into that, but are we going into our third year? That's what I'm thinking of, maybe, unless I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Anyway, I hope all you guys had a great Christmas and New Year. Please let us know if Whiskey Santa was particularly kind to you and you got anything exciting, any new bottles that you got from Whiskey Santa, and which ones were the best. Jess, did you get anything great from Whiskey Santa?
I did not. I think Whiskey Santa might be slightly biased to people who don't work at Master of Malt, but how about you, Andy?
I got quite a lot of whiskey, actually. It just seems to be that thing that everyone buys me because they're like, what shall I get you for Christmas? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, should I get you some whiskey? I'm like, yeah, go for it.
Is there such a thing as too many bottles?
No, there isn't, but it was very good. It was very good. So I can already see some of your comments coming in. David Walcott, Happy New Year. Greetings and Happy New Year, sippers. David Stanton, Happy New Year and good evening. Panda Bear, evening all. Hope Christmas and New Year was great. Joe F, good evening all. Joe, someone remind me later that I banned myself from buying any more whiskey beyond the monthly box. See if my self-imposed ban lasts the night. Okay, Joe, we'll keep you to that. Green Tea is Green, Happy New Year. Everyone, I am back. Welcome back, Green Tea is Green. We have missed you. Peter Gilmore, hello everyone. And Tom Newman, I'm here. Good, Tom Newman, present. So just a couple of bits of housekeeping. Usually it is myself and Christy co-hosting, but I should mention that Christy is moving on to focus on her freelance writing career, which we wish her all the absolute best in. Christy's been a wonderful host for everybody here at Pour and Sip, and I'm sure we're all going to miss her dearly. However, here is Jess, who is just as good, if not better.
Yeah, gutted that I won't be able to, watch Christy having a great time on a Thursday, but delighted I'll be able to do it instead.
Yes, you'll be having a good time instead. So for any of you new Pour and Sippers, you would have received your box in the post, one of these lovely big ones here with your whiskey in and your Glencairn glasses. I actually received 2 Glencairn glasses for this box, even though I don't know, it's a thing that happened to everyone's boxes at the start of this year. Is it?
I'm not entirely sure.
The thing is, you can never have too many of these glasses.
Exactly. I was going to say it's a win-win.
I must have about 30 here because I always seem to manage to get them. You can never have too many.
Well, I thought this, but then the last live tasting I did, I couldn't find a single one. So,
so if you are new here, please welcome to our live tastings. We do these every month, and we will go through all of the whiskies in your box. We've got 3 wonderful interviewers, guests, lined up for you tonight from Highland Park. We've got from Douglas Laing and from Benrinnes. So we look forward to chatting to those. And please, please, please get involved with your comments. Please let us know what you think of the whiskey. Please remember there is no question that is silly or too silly to ask. Just ask away and we'll put those questions to our guests. And yeah, just get involved. Please let us know your tasting notes, what you think of the whiskey. We love to read your tasting notes out, don't we?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and give us a little shout out if you are new, if this is your first live tasting, of the year, of ever, if you're new to Pour and Sip, say hi. Show us what you think.
Yeah, so I'm just going to put my power on because I can just see I'm on the red here, battery-wise.
Oh, no, we don't want Andy to leave. He's got all of the controls. I'll just be stuck here forever.
Joe F had an Oban 14, a Jura 14 rye cask for Christmas, and a Lafroig 10. Cannot go wrong with that one. Mike Pizarro got a nice Boona Haven for Christmas. Neil Bolton, a Tomatin for Christmas. Steve Howdy Doody also had my prize from Christmas Pour and Sip Tasting.
Oh, yes, our winner.
Winner of our very mean question that absolutely nobody... Oh, no, a couple of people got it, but Steve was the quickest.
Nobody got it.
Oh.
I think it was the closest. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, not even Andy got it. So.
There you go. Right, without further ado, a little bit of our order for tonight so you can get your whiskies in order. Jess, if you'd like to go through the order for us.
Yes. So first of all, Andy will be tasting the Speyside Reserve from Benrinnes and Rudd. Mm-hmm. Then I will be taking you guys through the Benrinnes, which is a Master of Malt exclusive from Douglas Laing. And then we're rounding it off with Highland Park.
Yes, with Martin. And then me and Jess will do a very, very brief whistle-stop tour of the last 2 drams.
So tasting the 3 Scotch whiskies in depth, and then we'll do a little mini tasting for the English and the Swedish whiskey.
Swedish. Lovely stuff. Right. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Joe onto the screen now. Hello, Joe.
Good evening.
How's it going?
It's going very well, thank you. Very well. How are we?
Good. We can hear you crystal clear now. It's all good.
Oh, that's good. A bit of technical issue before we started.
Right.
It would be a tasting without one.
It wouldn't be a pour and sip without a little technical issue. So it's fine. It was just you this time. Jess, we will see you in a bit. Enjoy dramming along. Right. How was your Christmas and New Year's, Joe?
Christmas, lovely, was with the family, and then sort of a bit of a raucous thing with some friends and a big old vat of chili for New Year's Eve. So yeah, very, very much needed.
That really sounds like a great New Year's. I said that earlier. Vat of chili. That should be a New Year's Eve tradition.
Yeah, I know. It's the one thing I can cook. So
yeah. All right. So talk to us firstly a little bit about yourself and how you found yourself and got into this position that you're in with Berry Bros.
Well, so my name's Joe Whittaker. I have been working for Berry Brothers and Rudd for about 4 years now. Started off as a business development manager, looking after West London. So trudging the streets of Richmond, Twickenham, and Chelsea. So sort of rough neighbourhood of London. And then then grew up, and now I am a prestige retail manager. For our range of spirits, including Berry Brothers and Rudd. But before that, I did 14 years in the trade as a bar manager, from everything to running Auckland's largest backpacker bar to rugby stadiums, to finishing up at Quo Vadis in Soho, being a head bartender there. So after 14 years of some wonderful times behind the bar, someone let slip about evenings and weekends, and I wanted to try them out. Then joined Berry Brothers and Rudd, and still work most evenings and weekends. But
that didn't work out.
No, but much more fun job with some slightly more social hours.
I was about to say that sounds great. Well, lovely stuff. So talk to us, for those who don't know anything about Berry Brothers and Rudd, one of the oldest wine merchants in the world. So talk to us about the history. It's a very colourful past, lots of anecdotes, I assume.
So yeah, so we think the oldest wine and spirits merchants in the world, founded in 1698 in St James's, number 3 St James's, which we still call our home. Our sort of, if you're in the area, if you're on the corner of St James's and Pall Mall, please do feel free to pop your head in. The office is a working office, but feels more like a museum sometimes. We started off, founded by a lady called Widow Bourne. We started off as a coffee merchants, all the way back then, 325 years ago. And when fashions changed and sort of wine, cognac, and whiskey were becoming more trendy in the sort of the late 1700s and early 1800s, we started becoming an independent bottler. And we've been independent bottling whiskies since about 1850, we believe. We're so old we lose things in our big old office. And a couple of years ago, someone at the back of a cupboard found a bottle of blended Scotch whiskey from 1848. So
is that been kept in a very safe space, or has it been sent to Bonhams or something?
So it is now behind a locked cabinet in our offices. Before, it was in a very unlocked cabinet. Sadly, that was before my time, or that may have been being found quicker, because I like to open doors in that building. Because you never know what you're going to find behind something. I've been told that there was a tunnel between us and St James's Palace, our neighbours. I've been looking for that ever since I started 4 years ago.
Okay. That would be interesting. Was that for anyone at Buckingham Palace who very much needed some whiskey or something to get there uncovered, not seen? That's amazing.
Yeah,
it must exist. You have to find it.
Roll the barrel down. Yeah, I'm gonna keep looking. I haven't checked the toilets yet, but that's the last place.
Awesome. So you mentioned obviously it was one measure, but you've moved into your independent bottling. Talk to us about the range. So tonight we're trying the Speyside Reserve. So talk to us about the range of the whiskies that you're bottling.
So the Speyside Reserve that we're trying is part of our classic range. The classic range was created just over 5 years ago by two of our experts, a gentleman called Doug MacGyver, who is our senior nose. He is the man that kind of goes out and finds our excellent whiskies with his colleague Johnny Mack, and a gentleman called Ronnie Cox. Ronnie Cox is a stalwart of Berry Brothers and Rudds and the whiskey industry. And together they got tasked to go out and find a blended malt that really showed the essences of like the four main styles of Scotch whiskey, which were Speyside, Sherry cask, peated cask, and Islay. And these were there sort of blended. For those who are not sure, understand what a blended malt is. It is malts taken from two or more distilleries that are blended together to become sort of a sum greater than their parts. And the whole idea of these is to really sort of embody what these styles are meant to be. And sort of this Speyside is sort of that perfect example. As well as the sort of classic range, we grow up into our sort of seasonal release, which is our single cask range. As I said before, we are 325 years old, so we are older than I think almost every Scotch distiller north of the border. So we have had relationships with these distillers for a very long time. So we've managed to get hold of some amazing liquids, and from that selection of casks, we sometimes bottle them, and from that we also draw from about 10,000 casks the liquids that we need for this classic range.
That's excellent stuff. And I take it you cannot disclose any of the distilleries that might be in this dram.
No.
We have to try on Pour and Sip, because every now and again we ask somebody and they do, and they say, okay, just between us guys here, NDA kind of vibe. But in this case, no. But I mean, the first thing that, for me on the nose is it's got those classic Speyside characters, as we were saying, and it's that kind of light floral, kind of aromatic, very fresh. There's some tropical fruits in there as well, lots of honey as well. It's really striking on the nose. It's a really beautiful nose at first glance. What about yourself? What are you getting from this particular? Nose? So
from this, I get everything I want from that classic Speyside.
Well, I get
everything you want.
What could you want? This is it.
I know, exactly. So I very much like you. I get some lovely honeyed orchard fruits, sort of going into that tropical fruits. So sort of those apples, sort of apples, a little bit of pineapple, a little bit of kiwi, sort of on the nose. I also get some really nice sort of malts, some either sort of crusty breads, or sort of the one thing that I did once smell and can never unsmell with this one is apple crumble with vanilla cream on top.
Oh, blimey. Now we're getting into Pour and Sip territory of food pairings and food in general. I'm just going to read out a few tasting notes here. Panda Bear saying, ooh, buttery. Peter Gilmore, mango too. Lol. Joe F, I've got flower petals, orange sherbet, light honey, and a vanilla undertone. Green tea is green. Yes, I'm getting that butter richness on the nose too, with lots of citrus. Malcolm Tucker, lots of fruit, apples, orange, and strawberry with some honey. Anthony Mullins, lovely honey on the nose. These are all classic notes that you get with a Speyside whiskey, so you can really tell what kind of the craft that's gone into blending this to make it that true representation of what you would get. Your Uncle Vanya, anyone getting the funk on the back like a soda prick, rusty and sour? Mine has been in glass for a while though. There is a slight element of funk, which isn't obviously probably from those sherry casks. There's something that's really pleasing, actually, to be honest with you. Mike Pizarro, butter for sure on the nose, green fruit and quite floral, more like an apple orchard than an apple. Richard Wingrove, nice fruity nose. They're all coming in now, Joe. Joe F, it's like the honey has been roasted. It has a sticky side to it, like a Marmite consistency to the honey. A little strange, but that's where my nose is taking me. This is what we love about Pour and Sip. It's just everybody's different tasting notes and different thoughts that they take them back to certain things that they tried before. Darren, liking the nose, Anthony Mullins, very delicate colour. Is this natural colour?
So yes, natural colour. From about, I think, roughly about 7 years aging in second fill casks. So there is that. So you do get, even on the nose, you get a little bit of that wood and that oak spice. But really, it doesn't dominate sort of what we want with this is that spirit to come through, that fruitiness from that malt.
Absolutely, and you can tell obviously these are not first fill casks being the the colour of it, and also it's not the sherry bomb that you'd usually get from a heavily sherry cask. So this is really subtle, but it's really balanced with those fruity flavours, and then there are those slight undertones of those baking spices that are possibly there. Jeffster, very long finish. Jeffster, you've already got to the finish. Me and Joe haven't even tried it yet. My word. Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you talk to us a little bit more about so the cask makeup of this, so we're talking sherry casks in general with any bourbon.
So I from what I get a lot of bourbon casks from this because you get a lot of that vanilla, which is sort of endemic to that bourbon, especially that sort of buttery, creamy nose. Is all of these sort of characters and what you get from a bourbon cask.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you kind of have that when sort of as you just sit, you kind of get a really nice sort of soft ending which will come from that cask. There may be a tiny bit of inert sherry in there to give it that funkiness at the end, but that I would be so surprised. I think it's just from that bourbon cask.
Okay. So I mean, for me, it's like that. The first thing is that creaminess and that lovely vanilla creaminess as well. That is really wonderful. Kind of custardy as well, which is absolutely lovely stuff. Green tea is green. There's a lot going on here. Like the earlier comment about roasted honey, as if the sweetness has been cooked out. Clive Hampton, very light, a bit like a Glenfiddich, but with more body and a kick. Real Boinga, there is a nice kick. So this is bottled at 4.2, and there is a nice little peppery kick at the end here, which is really nice.
So the 44 slightly higher than some of your other blended malts, around the same price range. Doug MacGyver, the guy who blended these, really wanted that slightly higher level of alcohol just to sort of carry that flavour, to give a much longer finish to it, but also sort of keep that quite orchardy apple, honeyed apple on the palate that sort of moves into those sort of baking spices, as someone said.
Yeah, Real Boinger knows woody honey that morphs to fruit and floral. Anthony Mullins, the taste packs an unexpected spice punch that I didn't expect after the nose. I'd agree with it. The nose is really actually, I think it's quite light and delicate. And it does surprise you in that finish. There is like a real punch to it. Even, I mean, at 44, it's not, we're not talking really high level, but it's more than often blended whiskey would be at 40. But it's nice that it's been bottled at 44 because it is giving it that little bit creaminess as well and that little bit of a punch. Ali C, smooth buttery apple pie with vanilla ice cream. This is from your apple crumble.
Yeah,
you put it in everybody's minds. It's very that everyone's now getting that. And very smooth. Just check the store and can't believe this is only £30. So much for not buying anything this month. Your face just went there. Is it £30? Really?
So well priced dram.
Well, that could be with the Pour and Sip discount as well. I haven't seen, so that would make sense. Remember, you do get your Pour and Sip discount for anyone who's new. You're 10% off in the Pour and Sip store. So please head over to that if you liked any of the drams that we're going to be trying tonight. Jeff Whiskey, the BBR, as you call it, Berry Brothers and Rudd, branding is top notch. Is that what you shorten it to in the office? BBR?
BB&R.
BB&R.
So we are. So to give you a bit of context for this, we are owned by two families. We are still family run. So the Berries are the original family, and then about 100 years ago, the Rudds joined us to bolster with some Italian and German wine, I believe. That's grape. If it's not boiled or grain, I'm not sure about it. So BB&R.
Is it something? Is this still one of those things that's going to go through generations and generations of these families of people still working there? Those traditions, you know, stood up as being a very family-orientated business.
Yeah. So we have been the same family for 325 years, and our aim is to be the same family for at least another 325. So it's sort of the family have to leave to go and work somewhere for about 10 years, and then before they're allowed to come back into the business, sort of keeping the business fresh, but also meaning that sort of you keep it kind of growing and keep it internal. So
that's really interesting and great to hear. Mike Pizarro feels really smooth and light on the tongue, not oily at all. Definitely has an apple and honey flavour to match the nose. Real Boinga palate, honey, sweetened fruit, berries, peaches, and a bit of cream. Jim Glancy tastes as it smells, buttery, fruity, but agree, lovely, long, peppery finish. Peter Gilmore of fudge finish, creamy a bit. Wow, you guys are filling me with loads of tasting notes. Ali C, this is very easy drinking, going great with some Marmite cashews. That's a food pairing I wouldn't have expected.
No, I might have to try that one myself.
Yes. Is there anything you'd particularly pair this with that you think, that would go great with this, apart from apple crumble?
Yeah. So what I really quite like to do with this is like hard cheese. Like a Comté or a Manchego is sort of what I really like to go with this, because slightly more. Or I have done it with a Parmesan before. Whether I've
straight up Parmesan.
Yeah, sort of one of those really nice. Like I, for some reason, had 36 month aged Parmesan in my fridge. I thought it would go really quite well. So yeah.
There you go, straight from the horse's mouth. Hard cheese. The Berry Brothers Speyside Reserve. That sounds wonderful, I have to say. A few more tasting notes before we wrap up. Richard Wingrove, nice and creamy and smooth with a fair bit of spiciness popping up at the end. Mike Pizarro would pair well. Wow, would pair well with a nutty cheese like a Manchego. There you go. That was before you said it, so very good stuff there, Mike Pizarro. Malcolm Tucker, palate, more honey, apples, fresh soft wood, followed by peppery warmth, finished with syrup from stem ginger jar and apple. That's a great tasting note. Jeffstead, blimey, just check the price out on this. Everyone seems to be surprised at assuming the low price. What does this retail at usually?
So normally I think the RRP is £40.
Okay.
£38.
So that's great value.
Oh yeah. The whole idea of the blended was to sort of have that sort of great value where people can explore if they want, or probably saying everyday drinkers is not acceptable these days, but yeah, just sort of something that is definitely shareable. That's the point of these.
And Neil Bolton lastly saying Comté goes.
Yeah,
Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you about this dram. It's a wonderful dram, and I'm pleased we could hear you finally. I'm going to invite Jess back up onto the screen. Hello, Jess. What did you make of that one?
That was gorgeous, and I mean, I got apples through and through. That was just I love like an orchard fruity whiskey. You know, like if you apple crumble with custard as a tasting note, I'm sold.
That's the tasting note for you. Cool. So thank you very much again, Joe, for chatting to us. Hope to see you again. No pressure if you can't, but thank you again. Cheers.
Cool. Thank you.
What a start.
Yeah, what a start. And I mean, I think the bar has been set high. Sorry?
It has. But I'm going to invite Dougal on,
yes.
And we're going to be talking a bit about a Master and Malt special. So.
Yes, hey. Excited. Hello.
Hey guys, good, thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to leave you in the very capable hands of Jess, but I will see you all shortly.
Cheers,
Goodbye,
Andy. How are you this evening? You mentioned you were in Sheffield.
Yeah, exotic. I was doing some bits and pieces down this way before heading back up to Scotland, and you catch me in a beautiful Sheffield hotel room. So,
a lovely backdrop. Is this your first tasting of the year, or have you got off to a flying start?
No, usual flying start. So already on a couple in there under the belt. So, and from here it just gets busier and busier. So,
yeah, wasting no time. On that note, I mean, tell us a bit about you, because we are tasting this Benrinnes from Douglas Laing. Actually, a question from me first: is it Douglas Laing or Douglas Laing?
Douglas Laing is the
Okay.
generally for us in Scotland it would be Laing, and south it would probably be Laing. So yes, we're Douglas Laing.
Okay. It's like a Bon Iver, Bon Iver situation.
Yeah, very much so.
So yeah, tell us about you. What's your story?
Yes, I kind of a bit different to Joe, maybe in terms of how I got into whiskey. So I studied Scottish history at university. I was a tour guide the whole time, so I was used to public speaking and things like that. And so I kind of entered into whiskey, being typically Scottish and still enjoying a whiskey, but maybe not having that kind of knowledge base in the bar background necessarily. And then entering it, and I worked with Beam Suntory for about 4.5, 5 years. And so started as a tour guide with Auchentoshan. And then from there, slowly started covering some events, and then started covering more of the Scotch portfolio. So discussing the likes of Bowmore, Lefroy. And then the kind of transition into Douglas Laing was really looking for that next big challenge, because we have a lot going on as a company. We do a bit of everything.
Yeah, I can bet. So what exactly is your role now?
So I'm now Douglas Laing's global brand ambassador. So
Yeah.
I cover primarily would be Europe first, UK second, and then North America this year as well. So I fly out to Canada next week. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, exactly. It's the fun bit. I spend a lot of time in hotel rooms, as it turns out.
Yeah, I can imagine. So we'll get on to the distillery fun in a second, but independent bottlers are a funny one. I think they sometimes get a bit overlooked. So what's the history of Douglas Laing?
Yeah, so we don't quite have the 300 years of history, but we're doing pretty well. So actually, this is our 75th year as a company. So we're celebrating our 75th anniversary. So established in 1948, we were established by Fred Douglas Laing, family name. And to this day, we're now in the third generation, so still within the family. So today, Cara Laing, so her grandfather started a company, her dad then joined, Fred Jr., just to make it even more confusing. So Fred, followed by Cara. And her husband, Chris, is our CEO, Cara being the director of whiskey and marketing. Essentially, we've kind of got that family dynamic at the top of the company today. Fred in the middle is still involved as well. So Fred's stepping back slowly, now in his mid-70s, but he is still pretty hands-on. For anyone that knows him, you'll see him at the odd event floating around. So he's always a good one to chat to. So yeah, the company kind of developed from initially being a blender. We produced, we basically got the rights to a name called the King of Scots. We still produce today. Sold mostly in Asia specifically. So we grew out of this basically building up a back catalogue of stock to produce blends. And then when Fred came in the 70s, he saw this amazing back catalogue of amazing single malts sitting there that we should maybe look at start bottling some of them as an independent bottler. So we kind of divided the company in two. Then the kind of final big change happened in 2009. And for a lot of people, maybe where they know Douglas Laing first, is probably our most famous brand, if you like. We created Big Pete. And Big Pete is famous. I'm slowly cultivating the look as the best that I can, but he really added another dimension to the company. So from Big Pete, we spawned the Remarkable Regional Malt series. So we had this idea of blending, bottling, distilling is the newest part that I can talk about a little bit later. But we kind of slowly split into this kind of different elements of company, but all stemmed from being a blender first. That expertise allowed us to build up these relationships, build up this amazing stock that we could then produce blended malts from, very similar to Joe, what you were just sampling. And then now we've got another aspect coming. So
that seems like a logical step in the direction. It was stocks.
Yeah, we certainly packed a lot into 75 years, and the company's definitely gone through a lot of changes. But overall, we stick with that heritage. It's within the family. It's that expertise, that craftsmanship of picking the right cask, the right time, the right spirit, blending the way we feel it should be blended, or bottling when we think it should be ready.
Yeah. And, speaking of, so you have Douglas Laing has the Old Particular series, which has, countless bottles almost. Like I see them all the time. But this is the Old Particular Fanatical about Flavour series. So what is the difference there?
Yeah, so it's one we wanted to really So we've always been based around this kind of ethos of as natural as it gets. We serve whiskey the way it should be. So always will be non-chill filtered. So basically no adulteration to it. We're not stripping anything away. It's always going to be high alcohol. So 46% alcohol and up. You won't find a Douglas Laing underneath that. And always natural colour. So we had this kind of ethos around doing whiskey the right way. The Fanatical about Flavour series was really based around this idea of let's stop second guessing it. Let's stop worrying about, oh, how many years does it say on the bottle? What colour is it? It's really end goal here is we want to drink a nice whiskey, and if you enjoy it, brilliant. That's kind of what we want to do. So strip it all back. We are very much all about what is the end product. Is it a good whiskey? And that's what we want to serve up. So forget about everything around it. Do you enjoy it? That's all that really matters. So we just want to serve whiskey as it should be.
God, well, I mean, I'll drink to that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the idea.
Yeah. Speaking of, I'm going to have a little notes. We've got the tasting notes are flooding through. So this is a Benrinnes distilled in 2006. Yes. So it's 15 years old. It was a Master exclusive, which is very, very exciting. A single cask, no less. And all we know about that single cask is that it was a refill hogshead. Does the fact that it's a hogshead give us any clue as to what was in there before at all?
So generally for Douglas Laing, and I'm not saying this is guaranteed to be the exact same rule all the time, but a general rule of thumb will be if we say refill hogshead, this will be American oak ex-bourbon hogshead, barrel creation essentially. So what we're doing here is looking at producing an American oak influence here, and hopefully it makes sense with our official tasting notes that we kind of gave along with it of this kind of very vanilla, buttery, butterscotch creaminess that you would expect for that American oak influence coming through. So rough rule of thumb, 9 times out of 10, if you see a Douglas Laing bottle that says refill hogshead, I would always lean towards assuming it is an ex-American oak bourbon.
Okay, that's interesting. That's cool to know. And I guess, yeah, you'll be able to tell by the taste anyway. Yeah, like super creamy, straight off David Stanton's getting French toast. Love that tasting note. Creamy barley, buttery vanilla. Panda Bear initially very sweet, but quite a lot of alcohol in the nose. I mean, it is quite strong. I would say, would you put water in this at all? At 51.5%?
51.5%. So it's not quite cask strength. Again, we try and serve whiskey where we see as like a nice sweet spot. So we want to give people the option if they want to bring it down from there. I'd also say it's so personal. I'd always maybe try, even if it's the smallest taste and the smallest nose to begin with, just as you serve it from the bottle. And then from there, if you do find that alcohol hit a bit much, especially if you're just getting into whiskey, just bring it down. Right? There's no right or wrong here. You do what you want to do with it. It's your whiskey at the end of the day. So please enjoy it how you want to enjoy it. So this one might open up a little bit more. You may get some of these more delicate floral notes in there with a few drops of water. But always try from the bottle,
Yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment. We're getting quite a lot of sort of sweet shop vibes here. Anthony Mellin's getting love hearts on the nose. Boinger's getting tutti frutti on the finish, surprisingly, along with some pepper. Peter Gilmore, pepper, spice, toast, and butter. All these like buttery, delicious. You know, my mantra is like, when cooking, the more butter the better. So this is definitely a whiskey for me.
Yeah. For me, I definitely that kind of savoury sweet note, like that kind of French toast is great, or for me, sometimes almost like a pancake character's coming in here.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like just a tiny bit of like you said, like a sort of savoury character to the butter. It's like creamy, but not overwhelmingly sweet. And can you tell us a bit about Benrinnes at all as well?
It's not a distillery you see much of. So it's under the Diageo bracket. So it is very much geared towards blending side for them. You don't see many releases officially from Benrinnes other than the Flora and Fauna series that Diageo generally release. So that's often the only time you'll see Benrinnes, unless it's from someone like ourselves or Berry Brothers or your Gordon MacPhail's, your independent bottlers are really where you're relying on getting whiskey you don't often get to try. So Benrinnes generally quite fruity, quite light. It makes sense with this kind of blending spirit background. You want something quite orchard and fruity and very approachable because it works really well as your kind of guiding point for blends. So for us, that's what we get excited about as a company, is we get to release stuff that you don't really get the chance to try. That's what is an independent bottler. We're here to sell stuff that is different, maybe completely opposite to what you might expect. Just because we're serving a distillery might not be the one that we think is most like the distillery character. Could be one that's gone in a totally different direction. So therefore it's a bit interesting and a bit weird, which is always fun. So.
Yeah, I guess, if you don't see distillery bottlings of something all the time, then there's almost no rules to break. You can just take the whiskey as it comes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not sitting here having to hit a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old, 18, 21. We can release it when it's ready, when it's different, interesting, developed in a different way. So yeah, lots we can do with it.
Seeing as this is a single cask, do you know how often that single cask would have been sampled over the course of its 15 years?
General rough rule of thumb is we'll get sampled more regularly as it gets older, because you want to see how it's developing. It's not like, I think there's sometimes a bit of a romantic notion in here that we put in a warehouse and then go back to it 15 years later and, oh, it's wonderful, perfect. It's all worked out great. I think far more likely you'll see it getting sampled early on, maybe only every year. So then slowly that'll become 6 months, then that'll become 3 months. We're always looking at how it's developing, because sometimes it might not go in a direction we expect it to, and we might not be too happy. So what we can do is look at recasking it, maybe changing the influence here. If we could take a refill hogshead, say, it's not where we want it to be, let's take the liquid, let's move it into a sherry cask and see if we can layer in a totally different flavour in there. So there's always this kind of making sure we're happy with the direction it's going.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've got so many tasting notes. Some licorice has been mentioned. Green tea is green, says there's quite a robust nose. Initially a bit sweeter than the previous Speyside we just had. Joe F gets a lot more of the toast from the nose with some water, and he's sort of guessing / asking if that's maybe some cask char coming through.
We do have a bit of chariness in here for sure. So this wasn't a first fill at all. This, like I say, we say this, it was refilled. So generally with us, again, safe to assume that's probably a second, maybe a third fill, but nothing further beyond that. We're not using a 7th fill cask here, but it still makes sense that if it's maybe a second fill, you might get a bit more of that barrel char coming through. Hopefully it's not overwhelming. Again, I think Joe said it as well to begin with, we don't ever want a cask to overly dominate the spirit. We want to present the distillery in a balance with the cask influence. So it's just about finding that sweet spot. And in this case, that happened to be around about this 15-year-old mark.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. I mean, Richard's getting lots of people mentioning aniseed and licorice. Green tea is green. Richard Wingrove, Neil Bolton, licorice, aniseed, all of that coming through, and quite a lot of herbaceousness. Everyone's getting sort of like sage has been mentioned. Darren can see himself with this by an open fire on a cold night, which, I mean, I'm not in Scotland, I'm not in Sheffield, but I'd say it's cold. So
yeah, we're still midst of January. I think we're safe bet that we're probably looking at a winter warmer. So
exactly,
it's got that nice kind of gingery, spicy note in there in the finish. So
yes.
It certainly does warm it up.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned before there was like a little distilling sort of surprise that you mentioned. You come back to me. Tell us about that.
I think it's reasonably well known. So Douglas Laing, we purchased Strathearn Distillery back in late 2018, early 2019. And Strathearn at the time, it was basically established back in 2013, but it was at the time the kind of first craft boutique distillery production in Scotland. You were talking 30,000 litres just a year, so tiny. So since we've kind of inherited it and started taking over and doing some changes, we've doubled that capacity to a huge 60,000 litres a year. So vast. It's about 1 barrel's worth a day, if anyone wants to do the maths quickly.
Wow.
So it's a team of 2, about to be 3. Everything's still generally moved by hand, but proper handcrafted spirit. And as far as we see, it's something really special and quite unique. And this looks like that we'll be getting our first release of it this year. So probably towards the summer, you'll see our first Douglas Laing Strathearn release. So we're very excited about that. And that's kind of the next step, because we always wanted to be a distiller as a family-run business, but we were blender, bottler. Distiller was like the final feather in the cap that needed to be added. So we have grand plans for a second distillery that we can't disclose too much of, but that'll be Glasgow based. But yeah, so Strathearn is just outside of Perth, tiny distillery, but this year you will see our Douglas Laing Strathearn release. So that's very exciting.
Can you give any clues as to what, sort of the like distillery character is or anything yet, or is it very secret?
Big, robust, very creamy, very kind of malty cereal led, if you like. So we're very proud of the spirit. In fact, we released the new make spirit itself in small bottles this year. So there's only 1,500 bottles of it made available, but that actually went to some specialist retailers around the country. So you'll find if you wanted to get like a sneak preview of the spirit, then you would be able to actually try our new make. For anyone that wants to, you can't actually come and visit the distillery, but there's an element of it that I think is one of the most unique things is we do not have a sample safe. The distillers are literally sampling, kind of dip a finger under the spirit running through, tasting until it's basically at the point of cutting, and then you step away. So it's this really, really hands-on distillery, which is very fun.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I think, you see some things that say hand distilled and, to an extent you're like, well, the fire helps, but then when you say it like that, there are really people just like, always in the distillery, constantly tasting, constantly smelling, and it's really like a sensory human action. That's amazing. So, I mean, like you said, that's like a whole separate arm of Douglas Laing, right? So it's not going to you're not going to stop bottling incredible whiskies.
No, the idea is basically kind of complementing what we already have. So if we are producing our own whiskies as well and our own spirit, that gives us what sort of elements? One, it gives us liquid that we can utilise in our blended malt series. For anyone that's a fan of our Timber's Beastie Highland bottling from the blended malt series, Timber's Beastie, our classic bottling, now features Strathern liquid in there, so we can utilise it in that way. But at the same time, in the future, if we maybe want to do some cask trading or some spirit trading with other distilleries, which happens quite a lot, again, we now have our own liquid that we're producing that we believe will be very desirable and will give us, again, another element of the company to be able to work with.
Okay, very interesting. So, and we were just getting so many more like they all came through after I had a little sip. Thought we were, and there's so many more coming through. We've got Ali C with buttery vanilla, Calvados notes. That's interesting. Apples are back. Peppery, cinnamon spice, and very easy drinking for 51.5%. Likewise, Mike Pizarro couldn't bear to add water to this one. I would say, I think if you gave this to me blind, I wouldn't guess it was as strong as it is, and that is, probably likely thanks to the refill cask. It sort of mellows things out a bit.
Yeah, slightly bit older, just generally this kind of at the sweet spot. So again, higher alcohol but non-chill filtered. You got that nice fatty, oily nature, and you're giving it just kind of creaminess that's going to help soften that alcohol as well. So yeah, there's lots going on here that's in its favour for serving it at 51.5%. So
yeah, I mean, well, you clearly know what you're doing.
Hopefully, that's the idea.
Things like the apples and all the ripe fruitiness that people are getting, is that likely down to the spirit character, the Benrinnes spirit character, or more of the cask?
It's a good question. Generally, I'd always say you're more likely to see your orchard fruitiness develop early on. So it's more likely within your spirit. So you tend to develop that, whether that's through your fermentation or through your distillation point. You're generally going to develop that before you're getting into the cask. You can develop a really fruity spirit. What will happen is it might change in the cask. You might see it go from lighter peach and apricot through to being more stewed apples or get more kind of caramelized pears. So you might find it develops as it goes in the cask. So the fruit can change in terms of what fruit you're getting there. But I would generally say if you're talking your big vanilla notes, your toffees, your caramels, your butterscotches, you're more seeing it come through with the casking, whereas something like your fresh fruity notes tend to be more early on in the process. Okay,
interesting. Nice. And do you, this might be a super rare question, do you, Benrinnes particularly, do you know if you have many sort of like older bottlings of it, or is it, I think some whiskies do better around certain age statements? Where does Benrinnes sort of land? Do you know?
We generally have, with most of the distillers we work with a lot, we do quite a lot of Benrinnes. We bottle a reasonable amount of Benrinnes because we have good stock and because it's quite readily available, which is good. I mean, it's good for us. We have good whiskey that's available. What's not to like? But generally, we will have this kind of spectrum. Most of it will be on slightly younger age, but it doesn't mean that we don't have something tucked away in the background. Again, we've been this year planning with our 75th anniversary some pretty spectacular bottlings coming out. So, not saying there's a Benrinnes in there, but when you've got stock that's going back 50, 60 plus years that we're sitting on, that we know is good, there's nothing to say that we couldn't have an older something like a Benrinnes in the background.
Okay, cool. Very interesting. Thank you. And to round off, I've just spotted this beautiful tasting note from Green Teard's Green, who says that they find that the sweetness comes right at the start like a mini sugar rush and then quickly dissipates into a fruity, spicy tones, but with licorice and a slightly peppery finish. And I feel like that is just a very lyrical tasting note, and I really want to
Spot on. Yep, I like it. We can put it in the bottle next time.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, that's maybe one final thing I could say is with all of Douglas Laing's single cask bottlings, you'll always find a set of initials that's basically in brackets at the very, very end of tasting note. And you'll always be able to see it's only one family member that does all the tasting notes. So you'll either see it's Fred, it's Cara, or it's Chris. So if you see FHL, it's Chris, CAL, it's Cara, CGL, it's Chris. So you'll be able to basically pick out which family member actually did the tasting notes for that particular bottling.
Oh, that's amazing. I don't know how I didn't know that already. That's a great fact. I love little codes on labels that suddenly, I don't know, you just sort of think it's like some really nerdy whiskey jargon, and then actually you find out the meaning of it and you feel like you're in a little secret club.
Yeah. So all tasting notes for Douglas Laing are done by a family member. So
yeah, that really is the spirit of being independently run, isn't it? Family run.
Works of the job as well, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, someone's got to do it. Amazing. Well, I mean, on that note, thank you so much, Dougal. It's been an absolute joy. I'm assuming Andy will
move
himself back in.
Just appear. I'm just assuming Andy will just appear out of nowhere. That was really interesting. I did not know that either about the tasting notes and the family members writing them and signing them off. That's really cool. A nice little touch, I have to say. And that was super fascinating. So thank you so much, Dougal. And if you could stick around to the end, possibly, and we can maybe get the gang back together for one more question.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Just taken myself off. Just
I can do hosting too. It's okay.
No, I've just taken Jess off.
Bye.
Bye.
That was great. I feel like we kicked off with two super creamy, like buttery, fruity, you know, like all that appley vanilla goodness.
They've actually both been really wonderful. I think, both great drams, like you said, buttery, creamy, and lots of orchard fruits have been in the tasting notes for tonight. So
it's time for
change that a bit with our next dram. The dram's coming up. So I'm going to welcome Martin from Highland Park onto the screen. How's it going?
Not too bad at all. Not too bad. Just like one of the other guys, I'm at a hotel room starting the 2023 journeys now, which will be a busy year for Highland Park. So it's a 225th anniversary. So lots of things to do.
So many anniversaries.
We're right in between Douglas Laing and Barry Brothers age-wise. So it's 25 years now. So that's
just in the middle there. All right, so I'll see you in a bit, Jess, and we can chat over the last two whiskies and enjoy dramming along.
I will.
Yeah, so you're in Denmark at the moment,
I'm in Copenhagen, and tomorrow I'm flying up for the northernmost whiskey festival in the world in Tromsø, the Arctic Whiskey Festival, which is always quite exciting.
Sounds cold.
It sounds cold, but the good thing is we're most of the time indoors, but we will go out when the Northern Light comes out, and then might have a wee dram there. So, but
will they come out? Is that?
Yeah, there's a big chance. There's I would say 90% chance that the Northern Light will always be there. So
I think that just sounds magical, doesn't it?
Yeah,
under the Northern
and it's a beautiful part of the world up there. So it's good. It's good.
Awesome stuff. So firstly, just talk to us a bit about yourself, because you had a weird entry into whiskey from some, and I'm sure you've told this before, from some strange other things that you may have been doing. So just talk to us a bit about yourself, your history for those who haven't heard you before, and how you found yourself in Highland Park.
Yeah, well, first of all, I've been with Highland Park for 17 years and 33 years in the world of whiskies. So quite a while. And it started by coincidence. I was in the Danish Navy, and on an exercise in Scotland, we had a day off, and most of my colleagues went pub crawling, but I wanted to see a bit of Scotland. And when you drive around Scotland, it's it's very hard not to pass a distillery, or at least go into it, and that's what I did. And the first distillery I ever visited was Glenkenshire, and I was completely blown away, both by the whiskey, but mostly about the stories, the passion, how proud the people were about what they were making, and I kind of got a good interest for it. And I always been a nerd, probably still is a nerd. If there's something I really want to know about, I put all the energy into it. And one day took the other, and then suddenly I was working full time with whiskey, both firstly at World Whiskies in the airport, at the shops there, as a chief buyer. Later I came to Craigellachie Hotel in Speyside, just on the other side of the road from Macallan. And then I was approached by Highland Park to come and work for them, or for Edrington Group, and felt like a young guy that was asked by Barcelona to come and play football for them, because it was simply amazing to come and work with brands like Highland Park and Macallan and so on. So, and been there ever since. So 17 years, and is the global. They call me senior brand ambassador, but that's mainly because I'm very old. But I am the global ambassador, and spend between 175 and 200 days on the road during the year, which I really love. Can't see myself doing anything else. It's a wonderful world to be part of. Yeah,
absolutely. It's such a friendly industry, and
yeah,
kind of a family. It's all just everybody knows each other at the festivals, and it's just like seeing. That's why COVID must have been so difficult for people like yourself, not being able to do that, and not being able to travel and see all these people and do all of these things. But that's over now.
Yeah,
that's all finished. Mike Wally's saying Highland Park first tasted in the Cali Bar in Edinburgh, a tasting part of an Ian Rankin event. Highland Park has been my go-to since then. And TACD's got a friend in Tromsø. He's tempted to go. Mike, sorry, I'm doing some work in Denmark at the moment, but sadly out of sync with the Travel and Whiskey Festival. Everyone's in Denmark here, apparently. Anyway, so some tasting notes are coming through already, but we just before going on to the dram and what we're going to be trying, talk to us about Highland Park. It's such a we all see it on the shelves, the fascinating bottle, the Viking heritage, but just talk to us about the history of Highland Park.
Highland Park, first of all, we are still the northernmost Scottish distillery, so we're very proud of that. But of course, it have an influence in how we're making the whiskey as well. But founded in 1798 by a man called Magnus Jonsson, who was a butcher. That was his daily job. At night, he was a smuggler and illicit distiller, and then he was very known for working for the church as well, not as a priest or a minister, but he was what we call a beadle, man that helps out in the church. And in all books, it was told that Magnus did not even work for the church because he believed in God. No, he believed in whiskey. And the best place to hide the whiskey was, of course, in the church, as whiskey was known as the devil's dram. So what was a place to hide that than in the church? And so he did, until he got caught in 1798 and had to pay the first license. We very proudly tell you that we were established in 1798, but to be fair and honest, we got caught. And that's what happened. And he was forced to pay a license. Then later on, he got caught again, was leaving the island. He left the islands simply because he had two choices, either to leave or go to jail. And it was taken over in 1816 by John Robertson that made the distillery a little bit more famous. And the legal license was given in 1826 due to the Wash Act in 1823. But for the first 3 years of the Wash Act, the islands didn't have to pay a license. So old distillery, 225 years anniversary this year. So lots of things to happen, and So
knowing Highland Park, there will be lots of things to happen.
Yeah, well, we have a few ideas. To be honest, I can't say too much about it, but there's a few things happening, and
we're amongst friends here.
Yeah, only you and I. No, but let me just say there will be some very old stuff coming out from Highland Park in not so long, and of course a few activities at the distillery and so on as well. So yeah, gonna be an exciting year, and I think everyone that knows Highland Park, we're full of good ideas. We have talked about the Vikings for a long time, but now we also think it might be time to talk about something else. There are so many good stories from Orkney itself. There's it has quite a long history, Orkney itself, and the heritage up there is huge. So lots of things to talk about that there instead of just the Vikings. So let's see where we're going. But
that's really interesting. So talk to us though a bit about the distillery character of Highland Park and how its location plays an important role in that as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, Highland Park is known to be quite a sweet and fruity whiskey with just a good touch of peat at the end, very floral, and that's of course comes to local peat we have in Orkney that comes from Hoppister. For people that have been to Orkney, they will definitely notice that it's quite windy up there. Wind speeds up to 110 miles per hour every year, and that means that very few trees survives. And if you go to Hoppister, where we cut our peat, it's one of the very few peat bogs around Scotland that actually have no traces of trees in it. So and that gives us quite a sweetness in a whiskey that the peat will give us. When we burn the peat, the smoke will be sweet, aromatic, floral, but not this kind of. And don't get me wrong, I really love that. But the TCP, the iodine flavors that you'll normally get from most of the Islay whiskies, we can't get that because our peat do not allow it. So it's a different kind of flavors you get out there. And then of course we are very known for our use of sherry casks, either American oak or European oak sherry seasoned casks, which are core range up to 21 is all sherry casks. So and that's the same with what we have tonight as well, American oak and European oak sherry seasoned cask here. So it's the profile, fruity, sweet, hint of smoke.
All those things on the nose instantly with this one. We'll read out a few tasting notes. There's quite a lot coming in, and then we'll talk about this particular dram that we're going to drink tonight. So David Stanton knows orange oil, fig, butterscotch, waft of peat. Joe F, first time trying whiskey I already have a bottle of. Highland Parks are generally my absolute favourite and took a lot of effort to find the 15 anywhere. Joe F, dry on the palate is resonating. You're not already on the palate, Joe. You've pushed way ahead. Anthony Mullins, the peat is jumping out the glass, especially after the last two, but can get the caramelised sugar coming through. Peter Gilmore, that's a lovely whiskey with a smoky taste. Malcolm Tucker, poached pears covered in toffee fudge sauce with a hint of smoke. That sounds wonderful. And Green Tea is Green. That Highland Park is a very nice dram. Pete Gilmore, I'm not Pete Smoke whiskey, but this one is good. Actually, Johan Cabana saying one of, if not the best distillery tastings I've done was in Highland Park with Keith. Bless him. He opened the cupboard with the forbidden drams.
Ooh, don't say that. Don't say that.
Get him in trouble. Jim Glancy, properly chewy, lovely. Richard Wingrove, nice waft of peat, not overpowering. Good counterbalance to the previous two drams. It's very different. David Stanton, palate, heather, honey, and smoke with vanilla treacle and barrel char. I'm just going to read a couple more out. There's a lot here. Neil Bolton, nice smokiness takes a second to kick in. Then hello. TACD, this is a good amount of peat. So talk to us a bit about this dram in particular we're about to try. This is the Viking Heart 15-year-old.
Yeah, well, we used to have a 15-year-old on the market, which we discontinued in 2016. And honestly, we got quite a lot of requests to get it back. So about a year and a half ago, Goran Motion made this, which is predominantly driven by European oak sherry season cask, but there's a good amount of American oak sherry season cask as well, which gives us a beautiful kind of touch of tropical fruits. Some mentioned vanilla as well, which is definitely there, creme brulee, and some of these. There's brown sugar, melted brown sugar there coming out, especially on the nose, and then apple, pears, pineapple, these kind of things. And then, as Highland Park is very known for, especially for the finish, you'll get this beautiful honey floral flavor coming out at the end, and it's a long lingering flavor, quite a long finish for it as well. It's 44% ABV, so we wanted that to give it the right sweetness to it as well. So yeah.
So did you have the bottle with you? So yeah, it's the creamy colouring. What do you call it? Is it white? Is it cream?
It's off white, I think the right word is. Yeah. So it's ceramic, and it was to bring back some of the old stories about both in how the Vikings did it back then, the liquid they travel around with, which was basically meat, honey, liquid. They were drinking beer, a beer-like thing. They transport that in ceramic clay bottles as well. And again, in the old days at the distillery, the weekly or monthly dram was giving in ceramic bottles as well for the workers there to bring home. So besides that, of course, to give a new product some attention as well, we decided to put it in the ceramic bottle, and it works really well. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks great. Is it exactly the same as the discontinued 15 with a ceramic bottle, or is there something?
No. The discontinued 16 or 15 we discontinued in 2016 were basically only European oak sherry casks. About 35% first fill at that time. Now we have a wee bit more, and then of course it's a good mix of European oak and American oak sherry season cask. And the American oak gives us these kind of tropical fruity notes that we don't get from the European oak, where it's more kind of raisiny, dark chocolate, where here you get a bit more vanilla coming out, you get coconut coming out as well. So it gives us, in my opinion, quite a good balance and a fantastic complexity as well. So it's
it is this lovely orange kind of marmalade, orange oil. I don't know who mentioned it.
Definitely.
And then towards the end of the palate, it's this lovely tobacco leaf kind of cigar-y kind of note that is.
Yeah, and the orange marmalade or orange peel as well is something that we really love. It actually comes out quite a lot in our 18-year-old as well, but here it's quite dominant. Yeah.
Question here for you. I wonder what is the ppm of the peat on this. So I find it quite mellow on the overall flavour profile. So remember, ppm is something that's done. It's burned. It's not something that's the peat is. It's this certain figure. Tasting it in the glass. This is something that is done in the burning of the barley. Yeah.
So the ppm is a funny thing because it's a technical measurement, but it doesn't really tell you how the flavor is. But we do our floor malting ourselves. 20 to 25% of everything that's malted for Highland Park is done by ourselves, and everything we make at the distillery, our own floor malting there, will be up to between 38 and 45 ppm. Then we mix 20% of that with 80% unpeated, which takes the ppm value down quite a bit. Okay. So I would reckon the ppm in the malt, not in the whiskey, but in the malt, is around 8 or 9 when it comes out. So that's. It's definitely not an Isla, Lafroig, these kind of things, but the peat is there. And even though we have a few cask up there that is made of, without the 80% unpeated, and even though we have 45 ppm there, it will never be like Lafroig because our peat are not allowed. So technically speaking, yes, it's a high ppm in what we're making ourselves, but taste-wise, not that peated. But it gives us a chance to play around with different levels. Yeah.
Sure. And that's why Joe is saying he finds it quite mellow on the overall.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So.
Okay, for sure. Ali C, Highland Park, by far the most interesting distillery tour and tasting. David Walcott, bonfire doused with seawater with a lingering hint of sweet stuff cooked on the fire for me. Panda Bear, leathery and burnt toffee background, sweet finish at the back. Jim Glancy, water killed it for me, I'm afraid. I feel like at 44, this one, I don't think it drinks like it necessarily is calling out for water. Obviously, I would add maybe a tiny drop of water to this, not much.
I would say water is a very personal thing. It's we have whiskies out there. Some of our single cask is 66%, where I would normally add a few drops of water to it if we want to survive. But there's people out there that drinks it as it is. But I think when we have these 40, 43, 44, 40 up to 46, sometimes the whiskey is set. We don't need to open it up much more and could drink it. But again, there's no right or wrong. I just one thing, and I know that a lot of people will agree with me. When we have whiskey that is sherry matured, then water can kill it quite quickly. You get a whiskey that will be quite flat with just a drop too much, where when you find American oak bourbon cask has been the cask they've used for the full maturation, it can actually take a little bit more water to it. I think this is ready as it is at 44, but again, there's no right or wrong.
There isn't, and if you want to know, I've got two comments underneath each other. Who Jim Clancy has said, water killed it for me, I'm afraid, and Mike Pizarro says, water changes it for the better, sweeter and more distinct peat flavour. So this is exactly what you're saying. This is a personal choice. Some people may find it helps and opens it up to their flavour, what they like and their personal taste. So it really is no right or wrong answer on this one. Everyone's different. Dave Stanton, finish, lasting spicy cinnamon and smoky embers, brine and, I'm missing that, resins, peat. Real boinga, smoky cherry and honey taste with a peaty cherry tart finish. P. Burrett, sweet with a very smooth and rather civilized peatiness. That's a nice way to put it. With a hint of caramel, an absolutely delightful dram, 10 out of 10. Anthony Mullins, the smoke seems to go to the background on taste. Fruit comes through more with a touch of smoke on the finish. Ali C, okay, being a local, I'm biased as a Highland Park has always been a favourite, but this is brilliant. Smooth floral, heather honey, syrup, subtle peat, smoke and citrus oil on the finish. There are loads and loads of notes coming through from this one. I'm really conscious of time. Thank you very much.
Keep it going. Keep it. I know. I think it's lovely, and I heard this kind of thing with the cinnamon, and that's one of the things that we have. And one of the best food pairings I had with this was actually flambéed pineapple that was covered with cinnamon. I can tell you that was unbelievable with the 15-year-old here.
I'm not sure that that's something we're going to be able to make at home. That sounds like something that was served up to you.
Yeah. But oysters, sweet chili crisps with this is fantastic as well. So yeah.
Oysters and Highland Park for sure. Richard Wingrove, honey seems to come through a bit more for me after adding a couple of drops of water. Neil Bolton, white ceramic bottle, interesting, could stand out well on my drinks trolley. Absolutely, I think all Highland Park bottles are going to particularly stand out well on everybody's drink trolley. So again, thank you very much, Martin, for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Pleasure to talk to you. I'm just going to bring Jess back on. Actually, if you wait, we have two more drams to try. We forgot about that. So we'll see you in a bit. Thank you very much, Martin, for chatting.
You're welcome.
Hopefully see you at the end. Hello.
Getting so carried away in the romance of Highland Park.
The romance of Highland Park. I've forgotten about our last two drams. So I think without further ado, we should probably just kick those off. Guys, if you have drunk, 3 drams, it's a lot to drink. And if you don't want to drink these, feel free to just listen. You can drink these at your leisure at a later time. You do not have to dram along with us. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, happy to kick off with the lates.
Oh, yes. England.
because yes, England.
England.
Actually got them. I've got both of them in glasses here, and like they are such. My camera's not very good, but the colours are so different. I pulled them out, and I was like,
exactly the same colour with your camera there, Jess.
yeah, I know. I was like, this is terrible. But the lakes is super, super dark, and the high coast is like almost clear. But not that that has anything to do with the flavour. But yeah, so English whiskey from the lakes, because it is part of the One series, is actually a blend of the lake's own single malt, as well as grain and malt whiskies from all across Scotland. So you have Islay and the Highlands and Speyside, I believe. So yeah, English whiskey is at the core, but it's actually a pretty interesting blend. And if we've got yours is showing up better than mine. So yes, and this, if we've got any pour and sippers that have been with us from the beginning, then they will recall trying 2 other editions from this
orange wine cask.
Orange wine, which confusingly is actually wine made from oranges rather than, well, not confusingly, that's probably the simple way, rather than orange wine, the kind made from grapes is just orange.
Yes.
And we also had the Moscatel.
Yes, we did.
So now we are on to the 3rd edition, which is the Clayton, if I've said that right. Yeah, I'm going for all the tricky pronunciations today. But yeah, so it's a port finish, which, and I think this this whiskey is almost like surprisingly smoky, because they just have that Islay whiskey in it. But this, this port cask, this port cask actually just adds so much fruitiness to the whiskey that it's so well balanced. It's so lovely. And I mean, if anyone has poured theirs out or just look at it in your dram, like it's certainly picked up the colour from that cask.
Absolutely. There's lots of like kind of an apricot nose for me as well, and like a jammy kind of nose that's there straight from the off. I have to say, I absolutely love the lakes and all of the One series. You can't go wrong with any of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it's such a good way to explore the world of cask finishes.
Absolutely.
And big news actually from the lakes. Just last week, they got a new whiskey maker, which is the legend that is Sarah Burgess.
Okay. So has yes, has he left or?
Dougal sort of left last year, I believe, to start up his own sort of whiskey consultancy firm. But the Lakes was one of his first clients, so he stayed working with them, but not. You know, I think he's going to pass over the mantle officially now that Sarah's on board. So that's really
he's
exciting.
Done amazing things with the Lakes, and they've really come on. So it'll be exciting to see a new chapter. Anthony Mullins says, "Being the boss, I always book the Friday off after these tastings so I can enjoy all 5 without worry."
I love that. Gosh, commitment to the pour and sip, Anthony. Yeah,
you take the day off afterwards after pour and sip. I absolutely love that. Well, that's really nice. I have to say, it's that kind of classic port cask that's there.
You can almost replace your port after dinner or something. I think that would be a really good time to drink it.
100%. So just a very quick one as well for the High Coast Timber, the peat smoke, which for anyone that doesn't know what that means, it is timber in Swedish. So if anyone doesn't know about High Coast, because to be honest with you, I don't know much about them beforehand, but it's founded really recently in 2010. It's called Box Whiskey beforehand. And it's one of the world's most northerly distilleries. And in Sweden, in this location, Norrland, the cold winters can take temperatures to 30 degrees below zero, and the hot summer days almost 70 degrees warmer. So you obviously will get all these weird cask fluctuations that, you know, increases the time and the maturation time. But, you know, during the hot days, the pressure in the barrels increases, the whiskey expands, penetrates deeper into the oak. And these temperature changes are ongoing day and night in this particular location in Sweden. So the timber expression is from this Sweden's High Coast distillery, made up of 100% peated malt. As I said, it stands for timber in Swedish, and it was aged in first fill bourbon barrels for around 6 years, bottled at 48% ABV, and it's part of the distillery's Origin series. What do you make of it? I've not tried much of the High Coast stuff yet, to be honest with you.
You know, surprisingly, like super peppery for me. Yeah, but then that lovely sort of, you know, duo of sort of quite savoury peat, I'd say, and then a lot of bourbon cask sweetness balancing it all out. So you've got that, like, you know, spice, sweetness, and smoke. It's lovely.
Yeah, there's like a salty note in there as well for me, and on the nose, it's a little herby kind of note as well, which is really nice.
I think the nose is much more savoury than it tastes.
It is. There's like a sweeter element on the palate.
Mm.
I'm actually going to go for another try of this because this is actually really cool. I like this one. Cheers, everybody.
Treat yourself.
Like a lemony note as well. Ginger.
This actually in tonight's set.
There's been nothing that's been particularly like. Oof.
No, exactly. I really enjoy it. I think
everything's been really nice. I wouldn't say easy drinking. That's a horrible term to use. I hate it.
Well, I don't think that should be an insult, but I do know what you mean.
It's not necessarily an insult, but it's like a kind of. I think it's not necessarily easy drinking.
Injustice.
Stuff that it's easy drinking. Everything tonight has been easy drinking. Simple. No, it's not. So,
yeah, definitely not.
Wonderful stuff. So I'm going to invite all the gang back on.
Yes, let's get the gang back together.
Let's get the gang back together.
And regular pour and sippers will know that this is when we ask everyone to pick their favourite right in front of everyone.
Our gang here, everyone gets to pick their favourite. But Jess, if you want to ask that question to everybody, you can do it today instead of me.
Right. Well, I mean, are we allowed to go for our own? Because that feels too easy.
Too easy. What's asked everyone? Well, look, everybody. I'm going to ask our guests a quick question as well. But if everybody could just let us know if there are any newbies that we have here. We like to ask everybody at the end, of course, what their favourite from tonight's box was, not just from our guests. If you enjoyed the High Coast the most, or you enjoyed the Lakes One cask the most series, let us know which one's been your favourite of tonight, and we will shout those out. So, guys, what I want to know is, did you try anything cool over Christmas? Anything new and exciting that you got over Christmas? Joe, what about yourself?
What did I try? I was drinking quite a bourbon over Christmas because that's what came over. So I was drinking a Rocktown and an Iron Root were the two things I was trying. So Rocktown from Arkansas and Iron Root from Texas. So quite
I mean, I've heard so much about Iron Root. You can't get it over here.
Not so much. Sort of mainly, almost all 100% corn distiller, I think. But because it's aged down in Texas. It picks up so much of that barrel. Just very easy drinking butterscotch popcorn sort of bourbon. It was great. Didn't drink much Scotch, strangely.
Okay, so a break from the Scotch for Christmas onto the bourbon.
A lot before pre-Christmas, so.
Okay. What about yourself, Martin?
Well, I had an old friend, if you might say so. I always been a huge fan of Mortlach 16 Flavour. It's very hard to get, but I managed to get a bottle and had a bit of fun with that. And besides that, I had a few cask samples from Highland Park that I had to go through. So good Christmas, I must say. Good New Year as well. Always good to try all these cask samples, but Mortlach 16 was a good old friend to come back to, and is never disappoint me.
Nothing like reacquainting yourself with an old friend, a whiskey old friend, I have to say. What about yourself, Dougal?
Yeah, I think maybe a combination with both the guys. So drank a lot of tequila, like a kind of tequila and tonic as a long drink.
Tequila and tonic as a long drink.
Yeah.
I've never ever had that before.
It's delicious.
That sounds amazing. I can't believe it's never crossed my mind that would be something that sounds amazing.
And then for whiskey wise, was doing some kind of older grains and things like that. Kind of going. It's Christmas time. You want sweet and creamy and easy drinking, and so nothing too much, to be honest. I think again, you kind of at the end of the year, you've probably done enough whiskey for that year to reset a little bit. So I certainly felt that way. Anyway, maybe my colleagues don't, but I certainly felt like I'd hit the point where I needed a change in spirit.
It's actually nice sometimes to have a change of spirit. It's a real palate kind of palate cleanser. Like I love tequila as well, and I think it's just sometimes it's nice to just for a little bit just have something else, and then when you come back to the whiskey, you're like yes, okay.
Yeah, like that old friend, if you like, as Lauren says. So.
Yeah, absolutely. What about yourself, Jess?
I sort of, in a similar vein, I just had a lot of Negronis. I don't really drink gin unless it's in a Negroni, but yes. And also I was back with my family, and they don't have, I have all the whiskey. They just have all the gin. So it was mainly making do with what I had. But yeah, what about yourself, Andy?
I got a bottle of the Compass Box Hedonism, which I've gone through. Just sorry, I don't want to say like water because I can't here, but it just, for me, that is just, I absolutely love that dram, and every time I reacquaint myself with it, it's just so sweet, so creamy, so kind of velvety and luxurious. It's a wonderful blended grain, that one. And then what else did I get? The Edredauer 10. I absolutely love that. It's an absolutely brilliant dram. It's a dirty, dirty old sherry, that one. And it's just funky and just absolutely wonderful. So those were 2 drams that I was drinking at Christmas time, along with also some Negronis as well, Jess. But if you want to do you want to read out some of these? I don't know if our guests need to cover their ears in case theirs aren't called out, but usually it's pretty even.
Yeah, a lot of opinions, but I think it's hard to choose a winner. So we've got, your Uncle Vanya is going to get the Barry Brothers and Rudd. He's going to get the Speyside Reserve. Mike Bazzara thinks the High Coast was interesting. Don't give it the time that it deserves. There's only so much time in one Thursday evening, Mike. I'm so sorry, but I wish we could have done it fully.
There is, and we do want to give the most time to the guests that we have.
Exactly. Can you imagine?
So yeah.
P. Barrett chooses Highland Park, just had the edge. Paul Murray, Highland Park stands out. Lakes are runner up, but the others are very nice drams. Ali C. Well, there's the Highland Park. I'll also pick up the Barry Brothers and Rudd. Ooh, okay. Your Uncle Vanya, Highland Park always. There we go. But lovely to see Benrinnes out of blends. Richard Wingrove, the Barry Brothers and Rudd is very tempting. Barry Cullen, the Highland Park again. Ooh, Clive, the Lakes with High Coast to close second. So he was a fan of our non-guest whiskies.
Yes. I can't see where you are here.
I'm going from down to up.
Ah, I see. That's why.
Yeah, sorry. I know that's confusing because I don't know how far they go. So I just thought I'd start at the bottom. Mike Bazzara, the Old Particular was a clear winner for me, but the Barry Brothers is also good. David Woolcock, Highland Park and Benrinnes. Ooh, bet Highland Park by a whisker for him. I would say, Highland Park is getting a lot of shout outs, but I would say it's as even as it almost could be with maybe just a whisker.
One of the great things about whiskey, we say this every time, is how it's subjective and we all have different tastes, but every time everyone's really got different opinions on these, and it's just like everyone likes all of them, to be honest, at the same time.
Exactly. Like this one, but these two are great. Oh, I actually can have them all. It's like, well.
Yeah, Anthony Mullen's the one, very closely followed by the Berry Brothers. So it's definitely a clear a mix tonight of, I would say, of everything, because whiskey is wonderful and all whiskey is wonderful. So there's never a clear winner.
Whiskey's this wonderful. How could we even ask them to choose?
That's exactly it. But I love asking to choose because I'm mean and horrible like that. So, well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on this Thursday evening. And thank you to all our guests, Martin, Dougal and Joe, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to all of you. Thank you, Jess, for being a wonderful co-host as always. And I would like to say cheers to everybody.
Yes.
Lovely Thursday. Sorry if any of our guests
don't have it.